Today I want to talk about 5 surprising facts about getting sober. The first one is that getting sober is just the beginning. It's the beginning of a new life. It's the beginning of a new you. How new is really up to you. It's also the start of some work, right? You've got to do a lot of work on this journey. How much work, again, depends on you. It depends on how you want the new you to become and what you want the new you to become. Obviously, the more work you put into it, the more thought you put into this, the better it's going to be for you. The better life you're going to have, the more fun you're going to have, the more of all the positive emotions, the more positive emotions you're going to have. You know, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out, and that's basically it. The second thing is that being sober is not the end state. It's not the final state that you're going to go in. I think a lot of people who get sober stay sober for the rest of their lives, but there is also a beyond sober. For me, I only stayed sober so long. I think sobriety, that word links to your old life. It's like alcoholic. It's like those things that you associate with alcohol. And for me, I just wanted to get away from alcohol. I wanted to get away from every association with alcohol in my life. Apart from this, of course, I've made this a career, so somebody who wants to get away from alcohol, it's a great career choice, no? But from a personal level, from a level of associating myself with putting it into my mouth instead of a teaching level where I'm teaching people to stop drinking alcohol and eventually to leave alcohol behind in all its forms. Sometimes crushing your old life, as in, you're really crushing this, you're really getting the most out of life. That means smashing your old life, a lot of your old life. Words have got power. If you call yourself sober, you're attaching sobriety to yourself. So that's what I mean by after sobriety, beyond sobriety, that there is a state where you eventually stop calling yourself that, or that's what your aim should be, to eventually stop calling yourself that. When you change the words that you use, you change the power structure or some of the power structures of the words that you're using, and that changes your mindsets. It changes how you see things in your life. I always think that sobriety or sober gives you or takes away a bit of your own power, because you're still beholden to this thing, you're still associating this thing, especially with other people, oh, I've been so many years sober, or describing yourself as sober. You're putting a stress on yourself that doesn't need to be there. You're putting a certain level of anxiety on yourself that doesn't need to be there through that association. That's a personal choice, though. The third thing I want to talk about today is how your social life is going to change. And this is, I think, one of the most difficult things. Certainly was difficult for me, and I'd left behind a lot of my social life in Ireland when I left for Spain a year before I stopped drinking alcohol. So there wasn't so much of that. I dealt with that the year before. But there was a huge thing that happened within my family. When some people find out that you've stopped drinking alcohol, some people are going to want to leave. And it's the same thing with you. You're going to look at some people and think, yeah, our paths have to split here. For me, it was down to whether or not the association, the relationship, the friendship was purely based around alcohol. If there were drinkers and that was the only thing that we had in common, then that was going to die, and I knew that from an early stage. But the beauty is that as you grow, as you expand yourself, you'll find other people. And why shouldn't you? Why should you lump yourself with people who are not bringing you up, who are not on the same page as you, especially people who are trying to drag you back down? Straight thinking opens up a lot of doors. It might seem painful, but it's all good. When you raise your own level, you bring the people around you up a level as well. When I came to Spain first, I left a lot of my drinking buddies behind, and that gave me a shoe up. It was difficult to leave that behind, I left a lot of friendships behind in Ireland, and that was a difficult thing. I left my son behind, which was the most difficult thing. I suppose that was the one thing that really made it easier to leave my mates around behind, because I'd left my son there. But it also made it easier for me to deal with that once I stopped drinking. I was heading back into that area where I was finding friends over here who were drinkers, but they hadn't become deep friendships, if you get what I mean. So it was a lot easier to do that, but it's an essential part of it. But I didn't leave my family behind. I mean, I came over here to be with my family, so it altered some of my family relationships. With my brother, for instance, my older brother, I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. My older brother, whenever we got together, it was just a big piss up. We'd drink a lot. We'd sit chatting most of the time and just spend a lot of time reminiscing. But, you know, a lot of it was just drunkenness. And when I stopped drinking, then he didn't really want to do that anymore. He didn't want to come and stay with me, but that was okay. You know, different relationships. I have a different relationship with him now. And that relationship, I think, is a bit deeper because of it, because we do spend time together where we're sensible. We go out walking a lot. We do a lot more active things. But this is all good. Like I said, you have to look at this from the perspective of you. You're the number one thing here, because if you don't look at it like you're the number one, not only are you doing yourself a disservice, you're doing everyone else around you a disservice as well. So look at yourself, think about yourself, and move on. You know, new person, new rules, new terms. Number 4 is that your values are going to change. Now, this is an inevitable part of the process. It's an inevitable part of you getting away from alcohol. It's an inevitable part of building the new you. If there's a new you, you've got to have new values. You've got to have new things that you're aiming towards and new ways that you see the world. You know, your values are always going to be reflected in what you do, in your actions. You know, you can say whatever you want, you can think whatever you want, but unless those thoughts, those ideas, and what you're saying is translated into actions, then they're not your values, they're not your proper values. My old values were to sit there in a pub, putting the world to rights, talking crap with my mates and drinking a load of beer until I got drunk, and then going home, falling asleep, waking up with a hangover the next morning, going to work, coming back from work, going to the pub and doing it all over again. Not every day. I couldn't afford to do it every day from a physical point of view or a financial point of view, but that was a part of my values. I had other values in my life, but that was part of it. New destination, when you're getting somewhere new and you want to go somewhere new, it means that you have to take on new values for yourself. New you, new values. And again, this is a process. It's a process that is not going to happen overnight. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's a big part of what we do over on Habits Feet 2. We teach this process. We teach systematically how to discover your new values and to implement them in your life. You know, this is one of the most important things. Like I said, if you're not living these new values, if you're not putting them into action, they're not real values. They're just in your head. We've got aspirational values, which are in your head that you want to get to, that we all want to get to. And there's real values, the ones that you're playing out in your day-to-day life. And number 5, you're going to fear a lot less. You're going to fear a lot less. I think it's such an important thing, this. One of the reasons I drank, one of the biggest reasons, was just anxiety, fear of life, fear of dealing with problems, fear about my own ability to deal with problems. And the more you drink, of course, the more fear comes about, because it's a vicious cycle. You just go round and around and around. You're drinking alcohol, you're putting this poison inside your body. You're momentarily not having to think about the problems that you're going through. But what does that do to you in the long run? It lowers your self-efficacy. Your self-efficacy is your self-belief in yourself, your self-belief in yourself that you can do this, that you've got the ability to do this, that you've got the ability to deal with your problems. Now, what happens when you hide from your problems? What happens when you hide from your problems? The problems don't go away. Problems are still there. Actually, the problems get worse. But your ability, your belief in your own ability to solve those problems diminishes. You know, any shit that was going on in my life, any problems I couldn't handle, I turned to the bottle almost straight away, without fail. And then the next day, the inevitable would happen. The problem would still be there. I'd have to deal with the problem, but I wasn't in a capacity to deal with it. I had a hangover. I had all these different issues. And like I said, my self-esteem, my self-efficacy was lowering down. Now, when you stop drinking alcohol, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough to see yourself in that position. It's tough to not have that crutch that you can hide behind anymore. But without that crutch, I'm telling you, your self-efficacy levels will rise. Your self-confidence levels will rise. Your self-belief, that will rise. And when you start to feel better about yourself, when you start to feel better about your own capabilities, your own abilities to solve your own problems, when you start to solve your own problems, even when you're making mistakes, even when you're having failures, you're still building that self-belief, and the fear will go. The fear will lessen and lessen and lessen, right? Now, if you're having problems with hangovers, watch this video next.